With new Nvidia graphics cards on the horizon, I wanted to talk about how I believe one GPU from the lineup in particular is going to become a very popular choice and will become this current generation's go-to option. The past year has been lackluster to say the least, but with recent developments on the software side of things and what people are perceiving as good value these days, I can see this card becoming a chart topper on a place like the Steam hardware surveys. Let's discuss that in this video. Hey, if you enjoy content like this, drop a like, make sure to subscribe, and smash that bell so you never miss another video. Hey, what is going on, guys? Danny here, welcome back to the channel, and I hope you've all been doing well. I wanted to follow up with you guys on our discussions surrounding the upcoming RTX 40 Super series from Nvidia. We've seen a number of rumors and quote-unquote leaks surface the web over the past couple of months, and while it was looking more and more likely that this indeed was going to be a thing, I still had my doubts. After giving it some thought, this is definitely the right play from Nvidia, and it will help rejuvenate some much needed interest or hype in the PC hardware space. Along with that, since we now have some actual screenshots of a partner model, some photos, and a retailer listing, this basically confirms the existence of the cards and the imminent launch. The first leak was posted by Momo on Twitter, and they have leaked stuff before, so they've got a reliable track record, and you can see from their post, this is an AIB model from ASUS. More specifically, it's part of their dual lineup, which is an entry-level series within ASUS's stack. ASUS has multiple product lines for their GPUs alone. They've got Dual, Tough, Strix, ProArt, and some other ones. Something that I haven't actually been a fan of, and it's not just them who does this, but every AIB basically does. I personally think 3 is really the max you need. You can have a small form factor version, something that targets the RTX crowd, a regular triple fan version, and then if you really need it, a liquid cooled version. Anyways, going back to the topic on hand, this does look like a legitimate render, and I'm beginning to wonder if there will even be a Founders Edition model. Now, if you recall, when Nvidia did the Super series during the RTX 20 Turing generation, they did have Founders Edition models, but the reason why I'm a bit doubtful they'll do it again is because we didn't have a Founders Edition card for the 4070 Ti, although we did have one for the 4070, so I'm going 50-50 on that. Regardless, most people will be buying an AIB card anyways, as those Founders Edition cards are only available at select retailers. Adding more credence to this leak, we have a screenshot of a German retailer listing an RTX 4070 Super Tough on their website. This listing was removed shortly after, but as everything on the internet, nothing is really deleted. Momo also chimed in about this leak, stating that there are actually 2 4070 Super Tough models, difference being one is a factory OC version, while the other one is closer to reference spec, which again just adds on to what I was talking about earlier about there being so many redundant models. It's not surprising to see these renders and listings pop up. I'm sure we'll be seeing more and more pop up in the coming days, as Nvidia will be holding their special GeForce Address keynote during CES 2024, and that's going to be starting on January 9th. And according to this leaked embargo schedule, while 3 cards will be released, it will be the RTX 4070 Super which will hit store shelves first on January 17th, so that's just in a few weeks. The major reason for this is because the 4070 Super is the GPU amongst the refreshed lineup which will have the most substantial impact on the market. If we take a look at the rumored specs, the 4070 Super should be around 15 to 20% faster than the original RTX 4070, which will therefore make it trail right behind the RTX 4070 Ti. Now let's take a look at a review from a website like Tech Power Up, who have done many reviews for various graphics cards over the year, and I want to use the data from their RX 7800 XT review as it will have the most recent numbers. And we see here, if we were to add 20% to the 4070, it's basically within striking distance on the RTX 4070 Ti. But just to give you guys more data to work with and to back up my point here, we'll look at another review, and here we've got Computer Base's review of the 7800 XT, which includes data for the RTX 4070 and 4070 Ti. If we're to add 20% to the 4070, then it'll essentially be neck and neck with the 4070 Ti. Based on that alone, we have a really good idea on how the 4070 Super is going to perform, and honestly in this case, you don't even have to wait for benchmarks. You can search up whichever title or game you're interested in on YouTube, add 4070 Ti next to it, maybe take off like 5% just to be on the safe side, and there you guys go, that's your 4070 Super. Now if you recall from last year and earlier during the year when we got the 4070 Ti and 4070, the feedback wasn't positive. The 4070 Ti in particular wasn't received too well. Most reviewers said that at its price, it should have at least come with 16 gigabytes of VRAM, and when you looked at its performance, which was around an RTX 3090, in some cases about an RTX 3090 Ti, that was a level most were expecting the vanilla RTX 4070 to have. But what I thought was a bit strange was some outlets reviewed the 4070 positively because they said it was an RTX 3080 with 2 more gigabytes of VRAM for $100 less, and their argument was that you couldn't buy an RTX 3080 for MSRP anyways, though that in my opinion was kind of a lame excuse because it was a exotic period during the GPU market with the mining boom that we had. And the crypto mining boom came a bit after. At launch, you could have picked up an RTX 3080 near MSRP. There was still quite a lot of demand because a lot of people at that time were locked in their homes and everyone wanted a GPU, but it wasn't a dire situation until the mining boom happened. I know because I picked up my RTX 3080 near MSRP at launch. The way I looked at it was what we had gotten traditionally in the past. With all the previous generation GPUs, with the 20 series being the exception, the X70 class has typically done well to match the previous gen flagship. It wasn't until Nvidia launched the RTX 2070 Super where it was competing with the 1080 Ti, and that looks like it's going to be the case again here too. Which makes you wonder if this is going to be a trend now, where you get a good value series, then disappointment, then something good, then disappointment again, and so forth. But that's a topic for a different video. People bring up inflation, and this is definitely a real thing, I'm not denying that, but my issue with people who bring this up is that they ignore the fact that this isn't just an increase in price, but you also get less hardware for the money. If the RTX 4070 came out at $599 and was delivering 3090 Ti-like performance, then I don't think most would have had an issue with it. I wouldn't have had much of a problem with it either, except for maybe wanting a bit more VRAM. Once the RTX 4070 Super releases, then that all changes, but we still have to wait and see what Nvidia is going to do for pricing. As we discussed in my previous video, this can go 3 ways. They might reduce pricing, which I don't think is likely for this tier. They'll keep the same pricing, or it will be higher. Let's assume the 4070 Super is announced at $599 MSRP, then I think this card will become a very popular option in the PC gaming market. And the reason for that is simply because you will now be able to get RTX 3090 to 3090 Ti-like performance at around the $600 mark, whereas before, if you wanted that level of performance, you had to pay $800 for a 4070 Ti or go used. But if you look on the used market, 3090s and 3090 Ti's were still holding their value really well because they offer 24 gigabytes of VRAM, and no other 40 series GPU aside from the 4090 was offering that. And then on top of that, you do also have the other concerns people typically have with the used market. Basically, what you're getting here is the true RTX 4070, what I was asking for nearly a year ago. Now, I can see this RTX 4070 Super getting a lot of positive press simply because reviewers will be comparing it to the 4070 Ti, a card that's $200 more expensive or $150 more expensive, and mentioned you can now get that same performance for less. And for those that add the 3090 or 3090 Ti in their benchmarks, they'll be pointing out how these were Ampere GPUs that were $1,500 plus when they came out, and now the upper mid-range market can enjoy this level of performance. There will be a lot of people who will happily eat this up and will gladly pay $600 to attain this level of performance. And don't get me wrong, while I'm not overly excited about it, I'm not saying it's terrible either, because with the way the market is currently presented, especially when you take into account new options, there's not a whole lot of other options that are offering good bang for the buck like this. The 7800 XT when it came out, and if you could find it for $500, was decent, but other than that, not a whole lot of other options. And speaking of the 7800 XT, since prices on it have actually gone up, next to a 4070 Super, which will be performing a whole tier higher, it's actually going to start looking pretty bad, and it'll have to have its price drop down to the low 400s for it to make any sense in the market then. Something interesting I do want to point out to you guys is that despite all the negativity you would have seen on YouTube, Reddit, and other online tech forums, the RTX 4070 has sold decently, and if you look at the latest Steam hardware surveys, it is the most popular 40 series card from their lineup, and funnily enough, you do have the 4070 Ti also not too far behind it. So you combine the performance of the RTX 4070 Ti with the price of the 4070, and you've got yourself a graphics card that will be selling really well off the shelf. Even if the reviews won't be amazing, I still think it's going to do really well. Depending on the title, this will offer you great performance at 1080p and 1440p, and even do decently at 4K. And given how much popularity in Steam these upscaling and frame generation technologies are gaining, these mid-range GPUs, I'm not just talking about the 4070 Super, but this applies to other options in the market. With upscaling and frame gen, a lot of people seem to be on board with it, and these cards are going to be doing exceptionally well. Recently, a modder within the community showed off a mod that basically allows you to replace Nvidia's frame generation with AMD's frame gen, which will therefore allow it to work with older Nvidia GPUs like the 30 series and 20 series. I'll talk more about this in another video if I've got time, and might even test it. But the 4070 Super being powered by the Ada Lovelace architecture means it'll work with Nvidia's frame gen tech, and you'll have the ability to take advantage of their quote-unquote performance multiplier. I'm personally fine with upscaling to a certain extent. I don't like frame generation because I don't like the input lag it adds, even though it's not drastic, but I'd rather turn down settings before I resort to using that stuff. In some games it's fine, like I was playing a Plague Tale Requiem. For a game like that, which isn't necessarily fast-paced, I guess it's fine. But my point here is that these technologies are really going to be extending the life of these GPUs if people are, willing to accept them. And from the feedback I'm seeing so far and the way people are going to links to mod FSR in games, if they don't have a 40 series card, stuff like that, then I think people are on board with it. Taking all these things into account, I'm not gonna lie, I am quite interested in this new mid-range option that will be hitting the market soon, and I want to see how others in the community will receive it. Pricing is definitely going to play a big role here, like I said. If they can keep the price at $600, then it will sell well. I think people are at this point now where, sure, you can go on and on about the past and talk about all those great value options you got before, etc. But if you look at what your other options are today, and as of right now, you cannot get 3090 Ti levels of performance for less than $700. So this 4070 Super is going to come in and offer much better bang for the buck compared to all the other cards. It's the same as what happened with the 7800 XT when that card launched. My opinion differed from what most reviewers were saying because I was focused on last gen, whereas they were looking more towards what's currently available. You could have always purchased an RX 6800 XT for less than $500. So that's why the 7800 XT didn't really appeal to me, but apparently a lot of people didn't see it that way, and during its initial launch phase, it did do decently. So we'll leave it at that for now. Just gotta wait and see what Nvidia will be doing. I'm going to try and see if I can get one because it is a card I do want to test out and give you guys more conclusive thoughts on. Until then, we'll touch base in the next video. If you guys found this video to be informative and entertaining, then leave a like. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. Be sure to check out the video description for cool links and ways to support the channel, such as using my Amazon affiliate link. And if you're interested in seeing more content like this, then consider subscribing. I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.